Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine you're standing completely still in, like, the dry, unforgiving heat of the African savanna.
Right. It's hot. It's quiet.
Super quiet. The air is thick, and you just feel like something is about to happen.
Hmm.
Then you hear a sound. It's not a rustle, not the classic rattle you'd expect. It's this focused, intense hiss.
Oh, that's unnerving.
And there's a movement. But it's so sudden, so impossibly fast, that your brain hasn't even registered what's happening. The threat is just there.
Wow. Okay. That intense, that feeling of just pure frantic velocity,
Yeah,
that has to be the mythology we've all built around the fastest snake on the planet.
exactly.
The Black Mamba.
You got it. We are talking about Dendroaspis polylepis,
Right.
the snake that basically embodies speed and terror across all of sub-Saharan Africa. It's long, it's sleek.
But it's not actually black, right? That's the weird thing.
Right, the skin is usually, gray or dark brown. It helps in camouflage.
Mm.
But the name comes from when it opens its mouth.
And it's just,
It's just terrifyingly inky black inside. It's this threat display that you absolutely do not want to see in person.
and its speed is just legendary. I mean, if you ask anyone, literally anyone, what's the fastest snake, they'll say Black Mamba. No question.
They're the undisputed king of reputation. And the traditional speed that always gets cited, from old field records and historical accounts, is around 12 miles per hour. That's 19 kilometers per hour.
Which is fast. That's faster than most people can run for any real distance.
Oh, for sure. And get this, the mamba can sustain that speed while moving with up to a third of its body raised off the ground.
Wait, a third of its body?
A third of its body looking right at you.
That's terrifying. But okay, here's where my scientific curiosity kicks in. 12 miles per hour is fast, but when we started looking into the sources for this deep dive, you realize that, well, the myth might not quite match reality.
It gets complicated.
Yeah, because we have to ask a really basic question. What does fastest even mean?
Yeah, that's the core mission. Because there are two totally different ways a snake can be fast, aren't there?
Two completely different ways.
Is it fast like a marathon runner, all about sustained speed over a long distance?
Oh, right, covering ground.
Or is it fast like a sprinter exploding off the blocks, just pure instantaneous deceleration in an attack?
Exactly. Cruising speed versus explosive strike speed. And if we don't separate those two things, we are going to pick the wrong champion every single time.
And the fastest traveler is almost never the fastest striker.
Almost never. So let's unpack this. Let's figure out who the true speed kings of the serpent world really are, and, well, why the mamba might have lost its crown.
Okay, so let's start with that traditional definition. Who can cover ground the quickest? This is all about sustained locomotion.
And the Black Mamba is definitely in the running here. It hits that 12 miles per hour or 19 kilokcalories.
For sure. But it's not alone. The sources show this, like a core group of really fast snakes all hitting that same mark.
Yeah, you've got the king cobra, Ophiophagus hanna, which is just this majestic, huge snake from Southeast Asia.
And the eastern brown snake from Australia, another incredibly venomous and super agile snake.
Right. They're all in that same 19 kph tier. They're fast, they're adaptive, they're dangerous.
But, and this is a big but, the sources immediately throw a wrench in the mamba's claim to the throne.
It's a huge one.
When you talk about pure, sustained speed over ground, there is one undisputed leader, and it doesn't live anywhere near the African savanna.
No, it lives in the dry, shifting deserts of the southwestern U.S. and northwestern Mexico.
And that is the Sidewinder, Crotalus cerastes.
And this snake is so much faster. It's been clocked at up to 18 miles per hour. That's 29 kilometers per hour.
That's a massive jump. It's like a 50% increase in speed from the mamba and that whole 12-mile-per-hour club.
It really is. So it makes you ask, wait, why? Why isn't the mamba the winner here? I always pictured it, just slicing across the savannah like lightning.
And that's a great question. The answer is that the mamba is a fantastic generalist. It's adaptable. But the Sidewinder is a specialist. It's an evolutionary marvel.
So it all comes down to how they move, and more importantly, where they move. The terrain.
The terrain matters that much.
Yeah.
And the answer is a huge yes. The Sidewinder is built for one incredibly difficult environment.
Loose, shifting, hot sand.
Exactly. Where the mamba would struggle, the Sidewinder thrives.
So it's not even slithering in the way we think of, right? That classic S shape.
Not at all. This is the sidewinding secret. It uses this really peculiar specialized movement where it basically lifts parts of its body off the hot ground.
So it's not dragging its whole body across the sand.
No, it forms these S-shaped curves, but it kind of throws its body forward and pushes off laterally. It's almost moving diagonally.
That's That is a genius biomechanical adaptation. I mean, think about trying to run on a deep, sandy beach. You just sink.
You sink, you waste energy, you overheat. The Sidewinder solves all of that. It creates these tiny, temporary anchor points that it levers itself off of.
And by doing that, it minimizes friction and how long it's touching that scorching hot sand.
Exactly. And that gives it 3 huge survival advantages. First, speed for defense and ambushing prey.
Lizards, small mammals, that kind of thing.
Second, it's way more energy efficient on a tough surface. And third, and this is critical, it avoids getting cooked on sand that can reach lethal temperatures.
So it's a machine perfectly tuned for desert speed.
It is the Usain Bolt of the snake world for travel speed. And just for context, that 18-mile-per-hour is an outlier. Most other snakes are way slower.
Oh yeah, like the cottonmouth viper is maybe 7 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Then you have the Texas rat snake at 6.
And then you get to the really slow group, like the coach whip and the racers, crawling along at only 4 miles per hour. The gap is massive.
It really is.
So now let's pivot to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. The massive constrictors.
The tanks.
The tanks of the snake world, yeah. Here, speed is totally irrelevant. It's all about mass and crushing power.
And this is the heavyweight title fight we all want to see. Python versus Anaconda.
It is. The sources compare the python from Asia and Africa to the anaconda from South America. And while they're both titans, one has a clear advantage.
And that's the Anaconda?
The anaconda, yeah. Physically, the reticulated python can actually be longer. Records show them up to 28 feet. But they're relatively slender, maybe 200 pounds.
The long, lean fighter.
Exactly. The green anaconda, though, it might be a bit shorter, maybe 17 to 22 feet on average, but it can weigh a staggering 550 pounds.
Whoa! 550 pounds. It's just built for pure, overwhelming bulk.
Pure bulk, and that translates directly into its power and, surprisingly, its speed in the water.
Right, because it's mostly an aquatic hunter, isn't it?
It is. It spends most of its time in the swamps and marshes of South America. And in the water, it's actually pretty fast. It can hit 10 miles per hour.
And on land.
Much slower, maybe 5 miles per hour. But the water is where it's dominant.
And the python is the opposite. It's a land animal.
Totally. It struggles on land at only 1 mile per hour, and even in the water, it's only managing 2 or 3 miles per hour. It's just not built for it.
So that difference in mass really dictates their whole lifestyle. It's just too much work, too metabolically expensive for the anaconda to move on land.
It takes way too much energy to drag that much weight around. So it has to stay in the water where buoyancy helps it out. Advantage, anaconda?
But the really devastating difference, the knockout punch, is the squeeze.
The squeeze power, yeah.
Oh.
Both use constriction, obviously. They bite, they hold, and then they coil.
But the python's crushing force is measured at about 14 psi, pounds per square inch.
Which is definitely enough to kill you.
Oh, for sure. But it's nothing compared to its cousin.
No. The sources say the anaconda measures in at an absolutely astonishing 90 psi.
90 psi.
Wow.
That's like having a mid-sized truck tire parked on your chest.
I mean, it's just overwhelming. And that's what lets it take down huge prey like capybaras or even caiman.
And what's interesting is that scientists now think it's not even suffocation that kills the prey.
Right. The pressure's so high, it just causes immediate circulatory arrest. It cuts off blood flow to the brain and organs. Death in seconds.
So, yeah. The python is deadly, but the anaconda is just on another level. Heavier, stronger, and faster in the water. It's the clear winner.
Okay, so we've got the slow tanks and we've got the fast travelers with the Sidewinder as our champion.
Right.
But if speed is really about how quickly you can get a kill, then we have to forget about endurance completely.
And we have to shift to the third and maybe the most critical definition of speed.
The instantaneous predatory strike.
This is where it stops being about stamina and starts being about pure explosive physics. The sources say a strike can happen in as little as 50 milliseconds.
50 milliseconds.
Yeah.
That's twice as fast as human eye can blink. The fastest blink is about 100 milliseconds.
It's unbelievable. It's why we have that deep, instinctive fear of snakes. We literally can't react to that kind of speed.
We have no chance.
None. And that explosive acceleration is critical because their prey, especially mammals, have a super fast startle response.
Right, so if the snake is even a fraction of a second too slow,
the prey's brain processes the threat, their muscles fire, and they're gone. The snake has to hit its target before that defense mechanism even starts.
So measuring that kind of speed, a burst of violence that's over before you can blink, that was the next huge technological challenge for science.
It really was. The old ways just weren't cutting it. Historically, single camera video systems were just totally inadequate for measuring this.
You can see that failure so clearly in the old data. Like, they clocked the massive rhinoceros viper, Betis nasicornis, at only 0.39 meters per second.
Which sounds slow.
It's incredibly slow. When they used modern high-speed kinematics, its true speed jumped to 3.21 meters per second.
Whoa. So the old measurement was?
It was a 90% error rate, all because of motion blur and only measuring it in a flat 2D plane.
Okay, so that just necessitated a complete overhaul, a whole new research methodology.
It basically became a scientific adventure movie. We needed a high-speed lab.
And the movie starts with the equipment. Specialized industrial-grade video cameras running at insane frame rates.
We're talking 750 to 1,000 frames per second. This isn't your phone's slow-mo mode. This is capturing every single millisecond with perfect clarity.
And it's not just about pointing a camera at a snake. They had to capture the movement in 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z, to get the true velocity and acceleration.
And that required a really sophisticated setup using special 3D tracking software, like an open source one called Snake Strike.
So this is where we get into kinematics, which is really just the science of describing motion points, bodies, systems, without considering the forces that actually cause the motion.
So we're just studying the movement itself, not the muscle power behind it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's use a video games analogy to really get how this 3D tracking works.
Good idea.
Think about motion capture for a video game or analyzing a quarterback's throwing motion. You don't just use one camera from the sideline, right?
Yeah.
That only gives you a flat two-dimensional picture.
You need depth. You need triangulation. So the researchers set up 2 cameras at very precise different angles. Maybe one at 90 degrees to the strike zone and another at 60 degrees.
And by having those 2 different views, the software can figure out the depth, the z-axis.
But how does it stitch those 2 views together accurately?
That's where the calibration cube comes in. It's like the Rosetta Stone for the software. They put this cube with known dimensions, say with marks 15 millimeters apart, in the frame.
So the software sees the cube from both camera angles and uses it as a benchmark to translate the pixels it sees into precise, real-world millimeters.
Exactly. Without that calibration, all the speed measurements are just guesswork. This gives them forensic-level precision.
Okay, so they can map the space, but how do they track the snake itself that's moving so fast?
They have to put tiny, high-contrast markers on the snake's head.
Like little motion capture dots.
Pretty much. They track 6 specific landmarks. The center of the eye, the tips of the upper and lower jaw, the corner of the mouth, the fang tip, and the prey itself.
And that's critical because snake skin patterns are so smooth and repetitive, an automated system would just get lost trying to track it without those clear markers.
So once they unlocked this detailed kinematic data, they didn't just get faster numbers. They started seeing these fascinating differences in how the major snake families actually attack.
Right. The study grouped them into 3 main families based on what they saw. First up, the Viperidae, vipers, and rattlesnakes. Their strikes were the smoothest and most rapid, just pure power and velocity.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. They discovered this specialized trick that nobody knew existed before. They called it fang repositioning.
Fang repositioning. What does that mean?
In about half the viper species they studied, if the first hit wasn't perfect, if it didn't penetrate the prey gel properly, they would sometimes pull out one or both fangs and immediately stab it again.
You're kidding. Mid-strike. They're adjusting their weapon system in real time.
In milliseconds. If they needed a slightly better angle, they'd repenetrate right near the first spot. If they needed a much better grip, they'd actually move that side of their jaw forward and drive the fang back in somewhere else.
That is an insane level of dynamic control. And that has to be tied to their ambush strategy, right? They need that one perfect instantaneous hit.
It absolutely is. Now, contrast that with the Elapidae family. This is where our mambas and cobras are.
Okay.
They also have quick strikes, but their strategy often involves repetitive biting and squeezing after they make contact.
So they're less about the one perfect hit and more about just getting a good grip and delivering that potent neurotoxic venom.
Exactly. Their venom acts on the nervous system so quickly, their goal is just to secure the prey and pump it in.
And the third family.
The Colubridae, the rear-fanged snakes. They use a totally different, much slower method. They kind of use an alternating jaw movement to slice or chew the venom into the victim.
Which makes sense given where their fangs are located.
Right. And the studies also found a few physical factors that really correlate with a more powerful strike. It's not just muscle. It's also about the environment.
The first one has to be temperature. They're cold-blooded.
For sure. Higher body temperature led to higher strike velocity and, maybe more importantly, a higher probability they'd strike at all.
A warm snake is an energized snake. That makes perfect sense. Their whole metabolism is tied to external heat.
Second, the hunting style really matters. Ambush predators, the ones that wait for prey to come to them, tended to have much higher peak velocities.
Because they only get one shot at that fast-moving meal, it has to be the fastest biological launch in the world.
Whereas an active forager, like the mamba, might trade some of that peak explosive power for better overall agility and travel speed.
It's an evolutionary trade-off.
And finally, size. For the vipers, at least, bigger snakes, specifically bigger heads, meant higher peak velocity and acceleration.
So there's a direct correlation. Bigger head, faster strike.
A clear positive correlation. It all reinforces that viper strategy of a smooth, high-momentum, all-or-nothing attack.
Okay, so having officially dethroned the Black Mamba as the long-distance cruising champion,
A title that belongs firmly to the Sidewinder at 18 mil a route.
we now have to pivot to the most dangerous measure of all. That instantaneous acceleration. Who is the straight king?
This is the moment of truth. The new tech tested a huge sample, 36 different venomous snake species, and the data pointed overwhelmingly to one family.
The Viperidae. As the behavioral study suggested, they just dominated the top speeds.
They did. But the absolute fastest was not the Black Mamba, not even the rhinoceros viper, which was already incredibly fast at 3.21 meters per second.
So who was it?
The absolute fastest, the champion, is the Fer-de-Lance, Bothrops asper. This is a formidable pit viper from Central and South America.
And its speed was?
It reached the highest recorded peak velocity in the entire study, at a staggering 3.53 meters per second.
Wow. 3.53 meters. To put that in perspective, that's almost 8 miles per hour, but it's generated over a distance shorter than your forearm.
It's insane acceleration. And right behind it were the Turkish viper at 3.37 meters and another Asian pit viper at 3.50 meters. The top three are all vipers.
So what about the snake that started this whole journey? The Black Mamba and the elapids.
They were generally slower strikers.
Yeah.
And this really reinforces that idea of an evolutionary trade-off.
Right. The elapids rely more on their super potent neurotoxic venom, so they don't need that same level of explosive impact that the vipers do to deliver their hemotoxic venom and hold on.
The mamba trades that ultimate burst speed for overall agility and, a different kind of weapon.
But there was one huge surprise in the elapid family, wasn't there?
There was the death adder, Acanthopus rugosus from Australia.
And it was fast.
It was incredibly fast for an elapid hitting 2.21 meters. It totally defied its family trend.
Which just goes to show that if the survival pressure is there, in this case, for specialized ambush hunting evolution, will find a way to break its own rules.
It really does. But we need to put these speeds into perspective for everyone, because comparing 18 miles per hour for locomotion to 3.53 meters for a strike, it feels like apples and oranges.
It is. So let's bring back the sports analogy.
Okay, so if the Sidewinder cruising at 18 miles per hour is our elite marathon runner,
Holding a tough, sustained pace for miles and miles.
then the Fer-de-Lance strike is like a world-class weightlifter doing a snatch lift.
Yes. It is pure, explosive acceleration over a microscopic amount of time and distance.
The Locomotion champ sustains speed. The strike champ applies maximum force over a minimal distance. The sources say the Bothrops asper strike only covers about 157 millimeters.
That's about 6 inches. It's not about how far they go. It's about how quickly they get to top speed from a dead stop.
And they accelerate so fast the prey doesn't even have time to register that it needs to run. The whole thing is over before its brain even knows it started.
The beauty of deep diving into this kind of biology is that the findings almost immediately start to influence other fields like engineering and medicine.
Absolutely. The snake is basically a perfect biological template for how to move in really complex environments.
Which leads us straight to the field of snake-inspired robotics. Engineers are studying these kinematics, the serpentine wave motion, to build these super redundant, multi-link robots.
And these aren't robots for cruising down a hallway. They're designed for disaster rescue, for inspecting pipes, for getting into places where people and wheeled robots just can't go.
Like collapsed buildings or deep underground tunnels.
Exactly. But that creates a huge navigation problem. Deep underground, you lose GPS. The robot is on its own. It has to navigate autonomously.
So it has to rely on its own internal sensors, these things called MEMS, IMUs, micro electromechanical systems, inertial measurement units.
They're tiny sensors that track every little shift in movement, but they have a fatal flaw.
Error accumulation, or drift.
Right. The longer it moves, the more the little errors in the sensor data add up, and its calculation of where it is gets more and more wrong.
It gets lost, basically. It needs a way to hit the reset button on that error.
And here's the aha moment that came from studying the snake kinematics. The robot moves in these periodic waves, just like a real snake. And at the end of each movement cycle, it's programmed to stop for just a moment.
A static pose for about 200 milliseconds.
And that tiny moment of stillness is the key. Since the robot isn't moving, its velocity is zero. So researchers applied this principle called the zero velocity update, or ZUPT.
Okay, let's use a daily life analogy for ZUPT.
Good one. Imagine you're counting your steps with a pedometer while walking on a really bumpy road. Your pedometer, the IMU, is constantly guessing, and after 100 steps, its guess of where you are is way off.
It's accumulated all that drift.
But every time you stop to tie your shoe, that's your 200 millisecond static pose, you know your speed is zero.
Ah, and you use that moment of known zero velocity to tell the system, hey, stop what you're doing, reset the error. Your next step starts from an accurate point again.
Exactly. They used that 200 millisecond window to correct the accumulated error, and they found it kept the positioning error to less than 5% of the total distance traveled. It's a perfect example of biology solving an engineering problem.
And beyond engineering, this research also loops back to medicine, and specifically back to the snake that started this whole thing for us.
The Black Mamba.
The ultimate irony, right? One of the most feared neurotoxic venoms in the world might actually hold the key to relieving human pain.
It's amazing. The venom of Dendroaspis polylepis contains these specific proteins called mambalgins.
And these mambalgins are being researched pretty heavily for use in pain relief. The early results are really encouraging because they seem to work through a completely different mechanism than traditional highly addictive opioids.
Yeah, one of the researchers, Dr. Eric Linguaglia, noted that it suggests this entirely new pathway for pain management, targeting something called acid-sensing ion channels.
So if this pans out, it could lead to a safer, non-addictive alternative for people with chronic pain.
It's just wild that the snake that launched our whole search for speed is now giving us clues to tackle such a huge human health problem.
And that connection to the vast, complex natural world is really the final powerful takeaway here. I mean, herpetology, the study of reptiles, is still discovering so much.
We think we have it all figured out with our high-speed cameras, but we're still finding entirely new species.
Absolutely. The sources mentioned a recent study in Papua New Guinea that identified 4 new species of tree snakes in the genus Dendrolaphus. We didn't even know they existed in these distinct forms.
The 4 new species.
And one of them, Dendrolaphus anthracina, was documented doing something unbelievable. It was seen subduing a goshawk.
A goshawk, a bird of prey.
A goshawk with a wingspan over 1 meter long. A snake taking down a raptor.
That just blows my mind. It shows how much we still have to learn about these predator-prey dynamics out in the wild.
It does. We've used all this incredible tech to measure the fastest biological speeds we can find. We've used that knowledge for robotics and medicine, but we have to remember the vast unknown.
We've measured 36 species, but how fast is that newly discovered snake strike, the one that can take down a goshawk?
We have no idea.
So we know the fastest recorded strike and the fastest recorded slither, but the challenge isn't over. It makes you wonder, what other biological superlatives are we measuring all wrong?
And what can the snake's environment, the sand, the rocks, the temperature, what can that really teach us about designing optimal movement, even for ourselves?
That's the question that stays with you, long after the fastest snake has vanished into the dust.
A phenomenal final thought. The deep dive continues.
Thank you for guiding us through this. It was an amazing journey into the world of serpentine velocity. And thank you, listener, for joining us on this quest for the fastest snake.